Wrestling has always thrived on grudges, but few men carried them like Japan's most infamous promoter-fighter hybrid. He didn't just wrestle, he turned the ring into a courtroom where respect was the only currency. Step out of line, and you weren't just working a match, you were risking a beating that left dents in both your career and your face. This wasn't about scripted rivalries or playing nice in the locker room. This was about pride, legitimacy, and a man who refused to be embarrassed. He held onto resentment like it was oxygen, and when he felt slighted, he turned cold, violent, and surgical in his responses. Over the years, a handful of opponents found themselves on the wrong side of his temper. Some no-sold his offense, some refused to respect his style, others bruised his ego with stiff shots or outright defiance. Each learned the same lesson: cross the line with him, and you weren't facing a pro wrestler anymore. You were facing a grudge that never ended. So buckle up, lean in, and brace yourself. We're about to uncover 5 real-life grudges. These weren't scripted fights. They were personal, brutal, and burned hotter than anyone in the locker room expected. Bruiser Brody, born Frank Goodish, arrived in Japan in the early 1980s and immediately tested the limits of authority. He refused to follow booking norms, often no-sold offense, and challenged the promoter fighter at every opportunity. Respect wasn't earned, it was demanded, and Brody didn't give it. Backstage, tensions were constant. Meetings became exercises in patience, negotiations escalated into arguments, and every stiff strike in the ring amplified resentment. Other wrestlers whispered about the friction, while the promoter fighter made it clear that refusal to cooperate would carry consequences in future bookings. One-liners circulated: no respect, no top matches, your paycheck isn't protection. Their clashes culminated in April 1985, when Brody participated in a high-profile match that drew attention for more than just the in-ring action. The heat was so intense that every exchange was tense and calculated. By the end of that year, Brody left New Japan Pro Wrestling abruptly, burning bridges and leaving a trail of frustration. Fellow wrestlers later confirmed the split left a lasting impact, with the promoter fighter refusing to overlook Brody's defiance. Despite leaving, Brody's influence lingered. Crowds responded to his presence, and his unpredictable style forced the promoter fighter to confront reality instead of ego. He became an example of what happens when defiance meets authority. The great Antonio was a Croatian-born strongman who tried to turn his raw power into wrestling fame. He quickly earned a reputation for ignoring the script, no-selling opponents' offense, hitting harder than a landlord's eviction notice, and daring anyone to tell him otherwise. In Japan, when he faced Inoki in 1977, the match exploded into chaos. Antonio's stiff strikes and calculated kicks turned into a shoot, as Inoki reminded him that professionalism wasn't optional. Other wrestlers watched in stunned silence. In that locker room, one misstep could land you in a booking nightmare worse than a cold shower from hell. Backstage, frustration boiled over. Meetings meant to smooth schedules became arguments over respect. Antonio argued. Antonio threatened. Antonio lifted more than weights. He lifted tempers. Inoki didn't just correct him in the ring. He sent a clear message: defiance would be punished. That fight ended Antonio's major career in Japan, and word traveled fast. He wasn't the boss of anyone but himself, and Japan doesn't reward ego-driven recklessness. Even his strength couldn't buy forgiveness. Fellow wrestlers would joke, quietly or not, that sparring with him was like debating a brick wall that hits back, and sometimes hits first. By the end, Antonio's legend was cemented not as a wrestler who dominated the ring, but as the guy who almost broke the most disciplined locker room in wrestling history. Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a lightning rod for backstage tension. In the mid-1980s, his meteoric rise in the United States left a trail of resentment. Fellow wrestlers whispered about his insistence on main event spots, his protective match style, and his constant need to control outcomes. One locker room veteran later recalled, "You knew Hogan was coming, and your teeth were the first to check in." He wasn't reckless like Brody, or defiant like Antonio, but his ego carved a different kind of path. Hogan demanded cooperation, and often bullied those who refused. Reports indicate that even casual disagreements could escalate, as he used his stature and influence to shape both bookings and backstage dynamics. He became a polarizing figure, loved by fans, tolerated by promoters, and often quietly loathed by peers who had to navigate his high-profile persona. Hogan's insistence on having control over every aspect of his matches created tension with anyone unwilling to comply. One senior wrestler described the atmosphere. If you weren't in Hogan's corner, you were practically invisible, or worse, a target for passive-aggressive pressure. The constant push for dominance made Hogan's shadow feel overbearing in locker rooms, turning routine preparations into exercises in patience and diplomacy. Yet his charisma and drawing power meant few dared openly confront him. Backstage, humor often became the only weapon. Quips and quiet jabs about his titanic biceps replaced direct confrontations. His presence was a reminder that, in wrestling, influence can be as dangerous as a stiff kick, and Hogan's reach extended far beyond the ropes. Every locker room knew, survive Hogan's ego, and you survived wrestling itself. Even now, if you survived watching and hearing about Hogan's ego without wanting to scream, hit like and subscribe. Keep up with the real backstage heat, no fluff, no kayfabe, just raw wrestling truths delivered straight to your screen. Don't blink, or you'll miss the next locker room disaster. Masa Seido earned Inoki's hatred the old-fashioned way, by challenging his authority and refusing to toe the line. In 1984, Seido joined Riki Choshu in leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling to form Japan Pro Wrestling. Inoki saw this as a personal betrayal. He didn't hate rebels in principle, but when those rebels had a history of sharing locker rooms with him, it stung. Seido's defection wasn't subtle. It was a middle finger in slow motion, and Inoki never forgot it. When Seido returned in 1987 for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, their clash wasn't just about the belt. The match boiled over with tension because every exchange was layered with real-life resentment. Inoki beat him, but the undercurrent was clear. Respect wasn't earned through matches alone. It was paid in loyalty. Then came the infamous Island Death match on Ganryujima Island. Over 2 brutal hours, Inoki and Seido went at it like the feud had been simmering for decades. Inoki won, of course, but the match wasn't just a spectacle. It was a statement: cross him, and you'll face the consequences. Seido's stubbornness, his refusal to fully adopt Inoki's vision of blending legit combat with pro wrestling's theatrics, made him an enduring irritant. Inoki didn't just dislike Seido, he hated what he represented: a challenge to discipline, authority, and his vision of wrestling. Seido's mix of rebellion, skill, and defiance made him one of the few wrestlers Inoki actively carried animosity toward, and Inoki made sure everyone knew it, both in the ring and behind the curtain. Inoki's friction with Giant Baba was less about wrestling skill and more about backstage power plays. Baba, a respected legend and co-founder of All Japan, often pushed his influence in ways Inoki found intolerable. Their clash wasn't subtle. It was a collision of egos with very real consequences. Inoki disliked the way Baba dictated talent usage, sometimes favoring loyalty over merit, which rubbed Inoki the wrong way. Every time Baba pulled rank or decided who got the spotlight, Inoki's patience frayed. Meetings meant to hash out talent exchanges or co-promotions quickly devolved into tense arguments. Baba's insistence on protecting his roster clashed with Inoki's vision of high-risk, high-reward cross-promotional bouts. Behind closed doors, Inoki reportedly criticized Baba for being too conservative, accusing him of slowing the evolution of Japanese wrestling. Baba, in turn, saw Inoki's methods as reckless, a reputation Inoki didn't care to deny. Sources confirmed that Inoki strategically avoided matches with certain top-tier Baba protégés to send a message. In his arena, control mattered, and defiance had consequences. Wrestlers on either side learned fast. Crossing the wrong legend could mean a spot buried or a hard in-ring lesson. Inoki's distaste was professional and personal, rooted in clashing philosophies and bruised pride. When 2 kings argue backstage, one leaves with a crown, the other leaves with a headache. Inoki made sure he got the throne. The list reads like a roster of backstage headaches, each entry carrying its own clash of egos and tensions. Every grudge was never casual. It was calculated, professional, and ruthless. These conflicts left scars, lessons, and stories that still echo in locker rooms today. Wrestling might celebrate cooperation in the ring, but behind the curtain, grudges could be as sharp as a steel chair. And for those who've enjoyed the brutal honesty and savage humor baked into the chaos, like subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let's keep digging into the heat that made legends tick and locker rooms tremble. Until next time, take care. And as always, thanks for watching.